Across the sands of time, civilizations have risen and vanished, leaving behind echoes of brilliance carved into stone, earth, and legend. Here on Forgotten Civilization, we rediscover those echoes, the mysteries buried beneath centuries of silence. Every week we journey into the past to unveil the stories of ancient ingenuity, lost worlds, and the people who shaped humanity's earliest chapters. Subscribe and travel with us into the forgotten heart of our shared history. The Call of the Cliffs. High above the arid mesas and deep within the canyons of the American Southwest lies a world frozen in time. Carved into the sheer sandstone cliffs of Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, and Arizona are breathtaking stone dwellings, multi-storied villages suspended hundreds of feet above the canyon floor. These were the homes of the Ancestral Puebloans, known to many as the Anasazi, a people whose ingenuity defied the brutal desert environment and whose legacy still whispers through the winds of Mesa Verde. The story of the Ancestral Puebloans is not one of fleeting survival. It is one of mastery. Long before the skyscrapers of New York or the glass towers of Los Angeles, the Puebloans built vertical cities, crafted with precision, vision, and harmony with the earth. They were astronomers, engineers, farmers, and philosophers, a civilization thriving in a land most would call unlivable. But who were they? How did they transform barren mesas into havens of life and culture? And why, after centuries of triumph, did they vanish, leaving behind their cliffside cities silent and abandoned? This is their story. A saga of resilience, mystery, and genius, carved into stone and illuminated by the desert sun. The rise of a civilization among the canyons. Long before the towering cities of Cahokia or the great mounds of the Mississippi Valley, the Ancestral Puebloans began their rise in the rugged plateaus of the Four Corners region, where the modern states of Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico meet. Archaeologists trace their origins back nearly 4,000 years, when small bands of hunter-gatherers began settling in the canyons, planting seeds, and building the foundations of what would become one of North America's most enduring civilizations. At first, their homes were simple: pit houses, circular dwellings dug into the earth, covered with wooden beams and mud. But even in these early designs, there was something distinct, a focus on community and adaptation. The Puebloans built close to water sources, terraced the land for farming, and learned to read the sky for rain and seasons. The desert was not their enemy, it was their teacher. As centuries passed, their knowledge deepened. They discovered how to grow corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters of ancient agriculture, sustaining large populations even in arid climates. They mastered irrigation, diverting scarce rainfall through intricate channels carved into the rock. Their food surplus allowed communities to grow, and art, religion, and trade to flourish. Trade became their lifeline. From the Gulf of California came seashells, from the Great Plains, bison hides, from far to the south, turquoise and macaw feathers, proof that the Puebloans were connected to a continental web of commerce stretching thousands of miles. By 750 CE, small settlements had evolved into villages of stone, and their architecture began to climb the cliffs. The people who once dug into the ground now looked to the skies. They stacked stone upon stone, building rooms, towers, and ceremonial chambers, called kivas, into the very bones of the canyon walls. These were not mere shelters. They were monuments of faith, culture, and communal strength. Imagine it. Sunlight pouring into narrow canyons, reflecting golden off sandstone walls, as entire families worked together to carve and shape their new world. Children carried water from streams below. Women ground maize and wove intricate patterns into blankets. Men hauled sandstone blocks, fitting them together without mortar so precisely that many still stand today, 1,000 years later. The Ancestral Puebloans were not just builders. They were dreamers. Every brick, every ladder, every kiva spiral symbolized something greater: the cycle of life, the unity of the tribe, the link between the earth below and the heavens above. Their world was both practical and spiritual, and in it, every sunrise and solstice had meaning. From the alignment of windows to the placement of towers, their cities reflected the cosmos itself. Long before the age of telescopes, they studied the stars. their architecture doubling as celestial observatories. The land of canyons became a kingdom of stone, and at its heart, high upon the cliffs of Colorado, Mesa Verde, the green table, would become their masterpiece. But even as their civilization thrived, shadows began to form on the horizon, whispers of drought, shifting alliances, and the growing complexity of life in the high desert. For now, though, the ancestral Puebloans stood as masters of their world, a people who turned sand and stone into sanctuaries among the clouds. The Golden Age of Mesa Verde. It is around the year 1100 CE. The high plateaus of Mesa Verde echo with the sounds of hammers striking stone, voices calling across the cliffs, and fires burning within newly built rooms. What had once been a scattering of small villages on the mesa tops was transforming into something monumental, a city among the cliffs. The ancestral Puebloans were now master architects. Using nothing but stone tools, wooden beams, and sheer determination, they constructed vast complexes, multi-story homes, storage chambers, and ceremonial kivas, tucked deep within the alcoves of the canyon walls. These were not random shelters. Every structure had purpose and precision. The most famous of all, Cliff Palace, rose like a honeycomb of stone and spirit. Containing over 150 rooms and 23 kivas, it stood as both fortress and community, glowing amber beneath the rising sun. From a distance, it seemed almost part of the canyon itself, a masterpiece of adaptation, where every wall echoed the rhythm of human life and faith. Imagine standing there 1,000 years ago, women grinding corn with rhythmic patience, children playing near the fire, smoke rising gently from stone chimneys, and priests descending ladders into underground kivas to offer prayers to the kachinas, spiritual beings said to bring rain, fertility, and harmony. Their world was a perfect balance between earth and sky. Each day, the sun's movement cast shifting patterns across their homes, marking time like a living calendar. The Puebloans studied these patterns with devotion. The positioning of windows and doorways aligned with the solstices and equinoxes, allowing sunlight to shine into sacred chambers only on specific days of the year. This wasn't mere coincidence. It was astronomy turned into architecture, science turned into spirituality. To the Puebloans, the cosmos was not distant. It lived in their walls, their crops, their ceremonies. Every seed planted was a prayer. Every building was a story written in stone. Their society, too, had evolved. Extended families lived together in sprawling compounds. Communities worked in unison to store crops, craft pottery, weave textiles, and conduct elaborate religious ceremonies. Women were central, the keepers of lineage, the stewards of homes, and the artisans whose pottery told the stories of generations. Trade routes stretched like invisible veins across the desert. Turquoise mined from the southwest gleamed in distant marketplaces of Mexico, traded for exotic goods, parrot feathers, shells, and obsidian blades. The world of the ancestral Puebloans was no longer isolated. It was connected, part of a continent-wide exchange of culture, technology, and belief. And yet, amid this golden age, there was always awareness that the desert gave, but could also take away. Their lives depended on rainfall, on the fertility of thin soil, on balance with the forces of nature. Rituals became more elaborate, offerings made to the gods of sun and rain, songs carried into the wind, dances performed to ensure harmony between people and the spirits of the land. The kivas, circular underground chambers, were the heart of this spiritual life. Entering one meant stepping into another world, a womb of creation symbolizing the emergence of life from the earth. There, leaders and shamans would pray, consult the stars, and guide the community through planting, harvest, and renewal. But the cliffs, as beautiful as they were, also spoke of isolation. Every day meant climbing steep ladders to reach fields above, hauling water from streams below, defending against harsh winters and scarce rains. It was a world of discipline, a civilization built not for luxury but for endurance. Still, the ancestral Puebloans endured and thrived. Their artistry blossomed, black-on-white pottery, geometric murals, and petroglyphs carved into sandstone depicting spirals, stars, and figures of spiritual power. Each symbol carried deep meaning, a record of beliefs, migrations, and cosmic order. For over a century, the cliff cities of Mesa Verde stood as the pinnacle of human adaptation, thriving communities in one of the harshest environments on Earth. When European explorers would one day stumble upon their ruins, they would stand in silent awe, wondering how such beauty and complexity could exist in so desolate a place. But as the 13th century approached, subtle changes began to stir in the desert winds. A drought, invisible but deadly, tightening its grip. Crops began to fail, springs dried up, and the once vibrant life among the cliffs began to echo with uncertainty. The golden age of Mesa Verde, a triumph of human will and ingenuity, was approaching its twilight. The Great Drought and the Vanishing People. The year is around 1275 CE. Across the high mesas and deep canyons of the American Southwest, the rains have stopped. For the ancestral Puebloans, whose lives depended on the rhythm of the seasons, this was more than bad weather. It was a cosmic imbalance, a crisis of faith and existence. The Great Drought, as modern scientists call it, lasted nearly 3 decades. Tree ring studies show those years as a long, unbroken scar in time. Years without rain, when the sun burned too hot, and the soil cracked open like broken pottery. Crops withered, springs vanished. The fertile terraces, once lush with corn and beans, turned to dust. Within the towering alcoves of Mesa Verde, life grew desperate. Families rationed food. Storage rooms that once overflowed with grain became empty. The sound of laughter that once filled the cliff dwellings was replaced by the quiet echo of hunger. Archaeologists have found signs of this struggle, layers of ash, broken pots, and bones showing evidence of malnutrition. Some sites even hint at conflict, burned villages, hastily abandoned homes, and scattered artifacts left behind in panic. It seems that the once harmonious world of the Puebloans began to fracture under pressure. But the drought alone did not destroy them. The drought was only the spark. The true downfall came from within. As food grew scarce, old alliances faltered. The networks that once bound different communities together began to unravel. People retreated deeper into their own strongholds, guarding what little they had left. The kivas, once centers of spiritual unity, became chambers of desperate prayer. Each ritual grew more fervent, each offering more urgent. The people pleaded with their gods, with the kachinas, with the spirits of rain and earth, to restore balance. But the sky remained silent. The ancestral Puebloans had always believed in cycles, of birth and death, of rain and drought, of creation and renewal. Perhaps as their world collapsed, they saw this not as an end, but as a transition. Slowly the people began to leave the cliffs behind. They abandoned the great dwellings of Mesa Verde, cliff palace, balcony house, spruce tree house, leaving behind tools, pottery, and even ceremonial items, as if expecting to return. But they never did. By 1300 CE, the cliffs that once held thousands had fallen silent. The fires went out. The ladders rotted. The canyons echoed only with the wind. Where did they go? That question has haunted historians for generations, but the truth is, they did not disappear. They migrated, following ancient spiritual paths southward and eastward, seeking new homes, new water, new hope. Their descendants are still among us today, the Hopi, Zuni, and Pueblo peoples of the American Southwest. They carry the memory of Mesa Verde not as a ruin but as a living story, a reminder of resilience, faith, and the eternal bond between humans and the land. Modern science helps us see part of the picture: the drought, the migration, the ecological pressures. But the Puebloan descendants tell another side, a spiritual one. According to their traditions, the people left Mesa Verde when the world there had completed its purpose. It was time to move on, to continue the sacred journey toward harmony with the earth. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson Mesa Verde offers, that civilizations do not truly die, they transform. The stone walls remain, whispering across centuries. The petroglyphs still watch the sunrise. the stories still breathe in the songs of those who survived. And as we stand today, looking upon the abandoned dwellings carved into the canyon's heart, we realize that what vanished was not a people, but a chapter. The next began elsewhere, carried by the same spirit that once built cities into cliffs. Mesa Verde stands as a testament to human endurance, how even in the harshest lands, people found beauty, meaning, and belonging. Its silence is not emptiness, it is remembrance. Rediscovery and the Echoes of Stone. It was December 18, 1888, deep in the snowy wilderness of southwestern Colorado. Two ranchers, Richard Wetherill and Charlie Mason, were searching for stray cattle across the high mesas. The land was rugged, covered in pinyon pines and cliffs that dropped suddenly into vast canyons. The air was thin, cold, and still. Then, through the frost and the morning haze, they saw it, a shadowed alcove in the canyon wall. But as they rode closer, the shadow took form. What they saw would change the understanding of North American history forever. Hidden within the cliff was an entire city, multi-story dwellings, towers, plazas, and kivas, all preserved as if frozen in time. Wetherill later described it as the most wonderful thing we had ever seen. That city was Cliff Palace, one of the crown jewels of Mesa Verde. When the explorers climbed down into the ancient settlement, they found pots, stone tools, woven baskets, and remnants of daily life, untouched for centuries. The rooms were small but carefully crafted, walls smoothed and painted, doorways perfectly aligned. It was clear, this was no temporary shelter. This was a metropolis, engineered with intelligence, planning, and artistry. News of the discovery spread quickly through the American West and beyond. Archaeologists, historians, and curious adventurers flocked to the region, drawn by the mystery of the cliff dwellers. But in those early days, exploration often came with destruction. Artifacts were taken as souvenirs, walls were damaged, and sacred sites were disturbed. It took time, and the voices of respect, for people to realize Mesa Verde was not a treasure chest to plunder, but a sacred heritage to protect. In 1906, President Theodore Roosevelt established Mesa Verde National Park, making it the first national park created to preserve the works of human hands rather than natural wonders. His words captured the spirit of the place. Here was a people who, ages ago, built great cities and left behind a record of their skill and endurance. They are gone, but the traces of their lives remain. From that moment, Mesa Verde became a bridge, connecting the modern world to the ancient one. Archaeologists began carefully documenting and restoring the ruins, uncovering layer upon layer of history. Beneath the dust, they found not just artifacts, but stories. Every piece of pottery, every grinding stone, every painted mural whispered of lives once full of hope, fear, laughter, and devotion. The kivas revealed ceremonial symbols, spirals, handprints, and images of the kachinas, the spirits that linked humans with nature. The architecture showed advanced knowledge of geometry, solar alignment, and seasonal patterns. Cliff Palace itself, with more than 150 rooms and 23 kivas, stood as an architectural marvel, perfectly blending human ambition with natural harmony. But for the descendants of the Ancestral Puebloans, the Hopi, Zuni, and Rio Grande Pueblo peoples, Mesa Verde was never truly lost. They had always known of their ancestors' homes. To them, the rediscovery was not an archaeological revelation, but a moment of recognition. A chance for the world to finally see what they had remembered all along. Elders from these communities describe the cliff dwellings not as ruins, but as living places. Spiritual homes still inhabited by the presence of their ancestors. They speak softly when visiting Mesa Verde, offering prayers, songs, and cornmeal, treating the ancient walls not as stones of history, but as bones of family. Modern archaeologists now work in collaboration with these descendant communities, blending science with oral history to build a fuller, more respectful understanding of the past. Excavations are now guided by ceremony as much as by measurement, and each discovery is treated as sacred. When you walk through Mesa Verde today, through the narrow corridors of Cliff Palace, across the ladders of Balcony House, or beneath the open sky of Spruce Tree House, you can feel it. The air carries the scent of pine and dust, but also something else. A quiet awareness that you are standing inside a memory. At sunset, when the light turns the sandstone golden and the shadows stretch across the canyon, it's easy to imagine the people who once stood there, watching the same sun, listening to the same wind. Mesa Verde's rediscovery is more than an archaeological triumph. It's a reminder that history is never truly lost, only waiting for us to listen. The ancestral Puebloans may have left the cliffs centuries ago, but their echoes endure. In the songs of their descendants, in the artistry of their pottery, and in the silent resilience of the stone walls that still hold their story. Legacy of the ancestral Puebloans. When we look at the ancient dwellings carved into cliffs, the intricate pottery designs, and the delicate balance of agriculture and community that sustained them, we are reminded that the ancestral Puebloans were not primitive. They were pioneers of sustainability and adaptation. They lived in one of the most unforgiving landscapes in North America, a region of scorching summers, freezing winters, and unpredictable rainfall. Yet they flourished for nearly 1,000 years. Their success was built not on domination, but on cooperation, with each other, with nature, and with the cosmos. Their architecture, for instance, was more than functional. It was an environmental dialogue. The cliff dwellings faced south to capture winter sunlight, while their overhanging roofs provided shade in the summer. Natural air currents circulated through the rooms, cooling them by design. Without modern tools or electricity, they mastered passive climate control centuries before it was understood scientifically. Their agriculture reflected the same genius. The ancestral Puebloans practiced dry farming, harnessing every drop of moisture by planting seeds in runoff channels, terracing slopes, and using gravel mulch to prevent evaporation. Corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters, grew together, each plant supporting the others both physically and nutritionally. Their irrigation systems were humble yet ingenious, guided by the contours of the land rather than forced upon it. Even their pottery and art carried messages about survival and respect. Spirals, waves, and animal forms symbolized life's cycles, birth, death, renewal, and the interconnectedness of all beings. These weren't decorations, they were lessons, visual prayers carved and painted into the things they used every day. And then there was their relationship with the sky. The ancestral Puebloans were not only farmers and builders, they were observers of the universe. Their ceremonial kivas often aligned with the solstices and lunar cycles, and their sacred markers tracked celestial movements that governed planting, harvest, and ritual. They saw no divide between the earthly and the cosmic. To them, the heavens were not distant. They were part of life's rhythm. This harmony, this profound integration of science, spirit, and environment, stands as a mirror to our own world, a world that has often lost its connection to nature. In an era of environmental crisis and disconnection, the ancestral Puebloans remind us of something vital. Civilization is not measured by how much we build, but by how well we live within what's already built, the earth itself. Their story also teaches humility. For all their brilliance, the ancestral Puebloans faced collapse when environmental pressures grew too great, when droughts persisted and the balance they relied upon began to falter. But even in their dispersal, they adapted. They didn't vanish into oblivion. They migrated, evolved, and their descendants continue to live on today in the Hopi Mesas, the Zuni Pueblos, and the Rio Grande villages, carrying forward the essence of what their ancestors began. They teach that endings are not failures, but transformations. Civilizations rise, change, and sometimes fall, but wisdom endures. The ancestral Puebloans' greatest monument was not their stone dwellings. It was the continuity of their culture, their faith, and their reverence for the land. Modern architects study their sustainable building techniques. Ecologists admire their land use ethics. Spiritual leaders draw inspiration from their worldview of balance and respect. And visitors to Mesa Verde still feel the quiet presence of a people who once lived fully in rhythm with the planet. Stand today in Cliff Palace at sunset, and you will understand. The stones glow with an orange light, the canyon fills with silence, and the wind carries the same whispers it did 800 years ago. It's as if time itself pauses, acknowledging those who came before and those who still remember. The Ancestral Puebloans remind us that civilization isn't about conquering the world. It's about understanding it. They mastered a life of balance in a land of extremes, and their message is clear. The future belongs to those who listen to the lessons of the past. As the shadows deepen over Mesa Verde and the ancient cliffs fade into night, we are left with more than ruins. We are left with questions. What can we learn from those who lived without greed, who built without waste, and who saw the earth not as a resource but as a relative? If this journey through the mysteries of Mesa Verde has stirred something in you, a curiosity for what came before, then you're one of us, a seeker of the forgotten. Subscribe to Forgotten Civilization, where the echoes of the past still speak, and every lost story finds its voice again, because history never truly disappears. It only waits to be remembered.